Hello everyone, my name is Wei. I'm presenting my final project for Educational Technology class. The title of my project is Developing an Interactive Simulation Application for Undergraduate Developmental Biology Lab. So one motivation of starting this project is the fact that undergraduate biology labs are very expensive to run. Not only reagents and equipment are very expensive, but also it usually needs more than 2 teaching assistants for a typical lab with 24 students. Why are more teaching assistants are needed? One reason is the hypothesis-driven experiment design for biology labs. It is impossible to write customized lab manuals for each group because each group has its own hypothesis and its own design, so that each group would have different issues and questions when designing and performing their experiment. I proposed here that simulation-based learning can prepare the students better for their experiment, and so that reduce the cost of the experiment and the workload for TAs. The reason that I propose simulation-based learning as a solution is that students are highly motivated when they are under simulation-based learning strategy because they are in charge of what they are learning. Secondly, students have the chance to explore or test their hypotheses, which can improve their critical thinking ability. And lastly, simulation-based learning provides a near real learning environment. This would decrease the cost of education and increase the flexibility of education. There are 2 powerful candidate frameworks available to develop my web application, PHET and React. PHET is one of the most popular frameworks to develop simulation applications. It is open source with detailed instruction for beginners to design and implement a PHET simulation application. Currently, there are around 30 interactive simulations relating to biology lab published on the PHET website, but none of them is designed for a undergraduate development biology lab. This is another reason why I want to develop one for development biology lab. React.js is another powerful open source framework for developing interactive single-page web application. The web application developed using React is highly dynamic and responsive to user input. I choose to use React.js to develop my application for 2 reasons. The first reason is that PHET is not very flexible when using customized pictures. The second reason is that code written in React is reusable and can be easily integrated with other frameworks in the future, including PHET. Shown here is the requirements gathered from the teaching assistants and the students from the developmental biology lab. Basically, this app should allow the students to select different experiment setups and then get the recipe of the artificial seawater for the experiment setup that they selected. And finally, should allow the students to visualize the simulated development process of the solution embryo based on their experiment setup. Shown in this slide is the user interface of this web application. Basically, there are 4 panels, including the control panel, the setup panel, the information panel, and the simulation panel on the bottom. In the control panel, the user can control the behaviors of the application, including starting a simulation, resetting a simulation, or calculating the recipe. In the setup panel, the user can select the values for each parameter of the experiment. Right now, the user can choose which species to use, what is the temperature and the salinity for the seawater, and if they want to test any drug in their experiment. All values are set to be default value as shown in this screenshot when the application starts. The information panel dynamically shows the current experiment setup. The simulation panel on the bottom will display the real pictures of the solution embryo at each development stages, based on the current experiment setup after the user pressed the Start Simulation button in the control panel. In the next slide, I'm going to show a demo for how to use this application. Before using this application, please get familiar with the early sea-urchin embryo development and the factors that would affect the development process. You can find useful reading material provided in my final report. After you figure out the values for each parameters you want to use in your simulation, you can select them in the Setup panel. For example, you want to use Variegatas as the species. You want to use 20 degree as the temperature. You want to use 30 ppt as the salinity, and you don't want to test any drugs in this simulation. You can review your current experiment setup in the information panel. And then you can press the Start Simulation button to simulate the development process. In the simulation panel, you can view the real Before using this application, please get familiar with the early sea-urchin embryo development and the factors that would affect the development process. You can find useful reading material provided in my final report. After you figure out the values for each parameters you want to use in your simulation, you can select them in the Setup panel. For example, you want to use Variegatas as the species. You want to use 20 degree as the temperature. You want to use 30 ppt as the salinity, and you don't want to test any drugs in this simulation. You can review your current experiment setup in the information panel. And then you can press the Start Simulation button to simulate the development process. As the default values. In the simulation panel. In the future, more functions could be added in this web application, such as calculator for the drug concentration, tool for data analysis. In addition, PHET framework could be integrated in this web application to add beautiful animations and interactive graph elements. Last, this web application will be tested and used in a real development biology lab in the future. I would like to thank all students and teaching assistants from the development biology lab for spending their time providing me with the requirements and feedback of this application. I also want to thank to my classmates from educational technology class who gave me so many wonderful suggestions. At last, I want to specially thank to Jimmy, my teaching assistant of educational technology class, who gave me so many useful reading materials, wonderful advice, and prompt feedbacks during this semester. Thank you all.